Thanks for staying with us this morning. We're out at Premier Farm and Home, and we're joined by Chad. Chad, it's been a while since we've seen you.
Hey, how you doing, Brian?
It's good.
Good to see you.
This spring and summer was kind of the have and the have-nots when it comes to pastures.
Yeah.
If you happen to get some rain, you have.
Yep.
If you didn't get any rain, you're a have-not.
That's right. I mean, we had an extremely wet year for a lot of regions in Kansas. Great news, we got out of the drought. Some disadvantages from that. We may have had some regional flooding and some other challenges that come up with that. And another problem we've had was a really challenging hay year. Yeah.
When you say challenging, is it as in too much water, which created weed issues, or just getting the hay out of the field?
Really just getting the hay out of the field was really challenging for a lot of guys. I know if you're like my dad was, he was sick of looking at the weather report, you know, and just ended up going and doing it, you know. So getting the hay out of the field was challenging. Rather than getting it all wrapped up for a cool season broom by the 4th of July, we were, you know, extending all the way into August in some cases, just having really wet conditions, trying to get that hay dried and having all that subsurface moisture almost just leaking out of the field in some places.
And when we're talking about wet hay, we certainly don't want to bale it wet.
No.
But we may need to have to put it up wet as well.
Right, you know, and a little shower on your broom is not too bad of a thing, especially if you're using like a disc mower or that sort of situation. But for the guys using the swather systems where they really pile it up and they need it to dry out, it was pulling a lot of moisture, just wicking it up from the ground. You know, made it really for a challenging drying year.
Well, you know, in the past we've talked about hay and hay pastures, and rain certainly makes great hay.
It does. Yeah.
Too much rain makes not great hay.
Well, a lot of times you can outrun your nitrogen a little bit. So we're relying on nitrogen fertilization to get a lot of that growth. And if you start leaching that out too fast, Brian, before the temps get there, it's just not available there for the hay. So we may have had a lot of hay, done pretty well, but maybe a little off from a bumper year as far as hay goes, really depending on if you got too much water or if you got just enough water, really played a part in that.
And when we talk about nitrogen, are we talking about putting it down now, or are we going to talk about putting it down in the spring?
Well, that really depends on your usage. For folks that are doing cool season pastures, they're grazing on fescue and those sorts of things, we really want to consider doing some fall application or maybe even splitting that nitrogen application. What that does is it gives you another regrowth in the spring and summertime, makes those plants able to bounce back from that grazing better by using a fall application of fertilizer.
Perfect. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to finish up with Chad, and we're going to talk about what you should be thinking about getting your pasture ready for next year. You're watching Kansas Ag Report. We'll see you in just a minute.
This segment brought to you by Kansas Regenerative Medicine Center. Your stem cells, your health, your life. Farmers Insurance, your best protection against the unexpected. Call Agent Dan Key at 785-408-5459. Grass and Grain, online or in the mail, keeping Kansas farmers informed for over 60 years. GrassandGrain.com. Blue River Traders, the finest selection of Western-style furniture for your home. BlueRiverTraders.com.
Thanks for staying with us. We're out at Premier Farm and Home, and we're joined by Chad. Chad, thanks for staying with us.
No problem.
First segment, we were kind of talking about too much rain and not enough rain, and the have and the have-nots when it comes to hay this year. We kind of got into fertilizer, and let's kind of expand on that.
Well, a lot of guys, you know, in the fall time frame, they're talking about maybe doing some weed control in their fall pastures, especially, you know, the use of Tordon to help with musk thistle and other, you know, the noxious weed lists that we have out there, those noxious weeds. And while you're doing it, I know liquid can be a little bit more expensive of a fertilizer, but it's a great option to consider putting an additional, you know, 30 to 40 units on in the fall time frame to really help thicken up your pastures and kind of help crowd weeds out in addition to spraying them then, so that you don't you don't have those heavy influx of weeds in the spring.
Well,
Yeah.
a guy doesn't go out and spray for weeds, and but he does fertilize. I mean, he's basically fertilizing the weeds as well.
Well, that's true, Brian, but you also, you know, if we think about our grasses and when they're allowed to grow and do their thing, they'll usually be able to shade out our weeds and those things. So think of it as, yes, we're fertilizing those weeds, but a lot of them are going to be dead anyway. So, for example, a lot of our summer annual weeds that have germinated after we hayed, we get a lot of this influx of growth. Maybe we're seeing some foxtail, or we're seeing some you know, other weeds out there that can be a problem. As soon as we get to the first frost, they die. So in effect, they really don't affect next year's brome crop or even this fall's brome crop. So as soon as they're dead, you know, getting a fertilization in there gets the grass thick, so then we don't have that winter annual germination or some of those perennial germinations you get in the fall.
Well, as we're coming in, we're into September now. What should we be doing for the next 4 months?
Well, I think especially for pastures, we're getting, you know, we're going to let the cool seasons recover, and we want to remember for our native stocking to try and keep them off for the month of August and maybe into September until we get that first hard freeze, and that allows those native grasses to really store food so that next year we're not injuring or diminishing what we could get out of those native pastures. Now, after the first frost, you know, all bets are off, putting them back on native, and especially even cool season grasses can really take some abuse there in the fall. So we just need to be careful about what species we have. You know, brome, we want to be cautious about regrazing that, knowing that that's going to rob a little bit of yield off of next year. Fescue pastures, we definitely want to graze hard in the fall and consider that fall fertilization.
If you have a weed that you're kind of confused about,
yeah,
bring it in.
We'll let you know what it is.
Perfect. Chad, it's good to see you.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.